You don't listen very well, do you? Stay away from her. I'm going to take you apart. Piece by piece. You just made a mistake.
Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and massive muscles. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at Killer Workout. This 1987 low-budget slasher, which also goes by the name Aerobicide, follows the employees of a gym called Rhonda's Workout. Members of the gym suddenly start being killed left and right, and the sketchy owner, employees, and police try to figure out who is behind the murders. Killer Workout was written and directed by David A. Pryor, who has brought us other low-budget endeavors like Man Killers, Deadly Prey, The Final Sanction, and Sledgehammer, which is actually the very first horror film shot on tape. His films are not masterpieces, but from what I can tell they look like fun. Being a super low-budget film, there aren't a lot of big names in the movie, but devout horror fans might notice a few familiar faces. The cast includes Marcia Carr from Savage Streets and Maniac Cop, David Campbell from Deadly Prey and Scarecrows, Fritz Matthews from Operation Warzone and Born Killer, Teresa Vanderwood from General Hospital and Night Visitor, and David Pryor's brother Ted from Jungle Assault and Raw Nerve. Killer Workout was released straight to VHS, and it was obviously not loved by critics. Most of the complaints I saw for the film is it's really basic and lacking depth, but it's also been described as fun trash, which I can get down with. Killer Workout currently has a 0 and 35% on Rotten Tomatoes, which looks pretty awful, but it does have a 2.6 on Letterboxd, so there is some hope here. Thank you to my patron Uncle Pete for requesting Killer Workout for me to review. I think whether or not the film is good or bad, we're gonna have some fun talking about it. I had vaguely heard of the film before, but have never seen it, so it's probably about time we get started. Grab your leotards and leg warmers, cause we're gonna have a killer workout. The movie opens on a woman named Valerie as she arrives home, and she listens to a voicemail announcing she just landed a modeling gig in Paris. Her agent suggests she touch up her tan, so she naturally heads straight to the tanning salon. Ah, this is the kind of movie we're watching. Valerie hops into the cancer machine and we linger over her body for a while, but the tanning bed suddenly bursts into flames. Final destination, eat your fucking heart out. She gets roasted inside, but not quite to the point of death, and we jump ahead 5 years to a gym called Rhonda's Workout. I hope y'all don't mind 80s workout videos, because I'd say a good quarter of this film is women decked out in headbands, leotards, and leg warmers. If nothing else, this film is a fascinating time capsule. I believe this form is typically referred to as jazzercise, but those of you who are alive at the time, please let me know if I'm mistaken. The class is led by Rhonda herself, who is being perved on by hulking employee Jimmy. Another employee named Jamie arrives to work late, and she is perved on by an employee named Tom. I'm sensing a theme here. Jimmy pushes his flirtation to asking Rhonda out, and her dismissal of him might be trying to set up some killer motivation. This was Jamie's class that Rhonda had to cover, and apparently this wasn't the first time. She gets off with just a warning though, and we join this random woman in the locker room. Her long ass shower leaves her as the last one there, and an unknown assailant turns out the lights and whips out a big ass safety pin. The attacker opens the shower door and starts repeatedly shanking the woman, finishing her with a stab to the neck. Jamie almost walks in on the killer disposing of the body, but she opts to snoop in Tom's locker instead. Nut sweat. A POV follows her into the men's locker room, but it's just Rhonda, who is very amused with her findings. Jamie moves the cleanup to the women's room, but starts snooping when she hears a noise from inside a locker. It's just a random rubber arm, I guess. That is until the dead lady pops out of the next locker. The victim is bagged up, and we meet Detective Lieutenant Morgan. He collects what he thinks is the murder weapon and asks the women if the victim had any enemies. The knitting needle and the body were found in the locker of a woman named Diane, who Jamie describes as a quiet, jealous type. Rhonda is primarily worried about how this will affect business, and Morgan promises she'll be seeing more of him. Apparently the murder has not affected business, although Rhonda notices word about the murder has spread. I guess they just don't give a fuck. She scolds Jamie for turning the workout into an extra sexy activity and finds this muscly man snooping through her files. This is Chuck, who says he's been hired by Rhonda's unseen business partner. Rhonda obviously isn't excited about this sneaky new hire, so Chuck is sent to take out the trash. While doing so, he is almost hit by Jimmy's dickmobile, and he tells the new guy to stay away from Rhonda. This leads to a hilarious fight scene between the two meatheads, and this lady pauses to appreciate the fantastic choreography. Chuck ends up seizing victory, and angry Jimmy roars his engine on his way out. Random girl Debbie invites this proven warrior to ride with her, and Chuck proves he really doesn't care about this new job by saying yes. They go to her house to enjoy some delicious Diet Pepsi in her backyard, and we learn Debbie was foolish enough to date Jimmy back in the day. She says he really gets off by tying women up, and Chuck requests that she give him his address. While she goes to grab it, he uses her yard phone? I'm sorry, is that a real thing? If you haven't guessed it already, Chuck is actually a private investigator, and he lets his client know he's looking into a suspect. He receives the address and starts to leave, but not until after he fucks Debbie in her yard. Meanwhile, Jimmy blows off Diane, the apparently quiet, jealous lady, and she doesn't notice Detective Morgan is tailing her as he waits for the DNA results of the knitting needle. Diane sulks over receiving 0 voice messages, but she isn't too eager for conversation when Morgan starts banging on her door like a madman. That's perfect for the killer, who stabs her Friday the 13th style. Morgan breaks in as the killer jumps from the second-story window and flees, and Detective Dumbass gets word that the needle was not the murder weapon. Back at the gym, the killer cleans their absurdly sized safety pin and removes what looks like a curly wig. Well, it's about time we pad these kill numbers, so some young vandals spray paint this movie's alternate title, as well as the name of another gym-based horror movie. The teens obviously split up and get picked off one by one, starting with some knife chops to the neck, leading to a sort of Michael Myers style throat slice, and finishing with stab to head through top of car. The bodies get bagged, and somehow the gym is still allowed to be open, and somehow these dance-addicted lunatics are still coming in. Now the killer isn't even waiting until night, they're just smashing and stabbing faces in broad daylight. Jamie catches co-worker Tom in a precarious position, and Chuck proceeds to knock him out. I love that they show every body being bagged. Morgan is suspicious of this new guy's arrival lining up with the murders, and he's sure to let his suspect know it. Delirious-ass Tom has a dream about fucking Jamie, I guess. That is until a second Tom walks in and slits her throat. This means absolutely nothing though, because after he is woken up by Morgan, he is almost immediately killed. This movie is a fucking fever dream. Damn it, enough with the bags. Now Morgan is suspicious of Rhonda and her letter opener, and she is once again pissed about all the money she is supposedly losing. Jimmy tells her he can help her with their current issues, and Morgan leaves one cop to keep watch over this meat grinder of a gym. While Jimmy pumps iron like a monster, Chuck breaks into his home and finds a pretty damning collection of weapons and photos. This leads both of them to the bushes outside of Rhonda's at-home pool, and after literally 2 full minutes of over-the-top attempts at street fighting, Chuck manages to stab Jimmy in the leg with a rake. But this only enrages Jimmy further, and he harnesses that rage to finally defeat the mighty Chuck. The loser wakes up in Rhonda's home, and Morgan reveals he has learned that Chuck's real name is Charlie and that he is in fact a private investigator. Apparently Rhonda's still unnamed business partner hired him to keep an eye on the place after the first murder, and he reveals a huge collection of Rhonda photos he found in Jimmy's locker. She always knew he was into her, but had no idea he was this obsessed. After breaking into his home, he was certain Jimmy was the killer and headed straight to Rhonda's, and based on everything, it seems she was his next intended victim. Morgan tells Charlie he is done with this case and to fly back home in the morning, which he is happy to do. While this officer is clearly hard at work, somehow the killer sneaks by him and manages to hang Jamie off screen. Kind of disappointing, I had assumed she was the final girl. The woman who found her is also killed, good work, officer. Morgan says farewell to Charlie as he picks up his belongings, and he is called back to the station to look over some files gathered on all the suspects. This leaves Charlie all alone, and on the way to his car he is ambushed by the Dickmobile. Jimmy hops out and finishes the PI with an ice pick for some reason. But despite what we just saw, it's time to finally learn how the opening of the film relates to all of this, as it is revealed that the wig-wearing safety pin killer is none other than Rhonda herself. Morgan has learned that her real name is Valerie, which she had legally changed years ago. Morgan was almost convinced that Jimmy was their guy, but while he is crazy, the original MO of the killer just doesn't line up. He's realized that aside from all being members of the gym, all of the victims were young, in shape, one may even say beautiful. Valerie Johnson was a beautiful model before 70% of her body was severely burned, and he thinks she became jealous of her own customers. Rhonda whips out her burnt up boobies and acknowledges the accident, but argues it doesn't mean she's a murderer. Morgan disagrees, believing she became furious that she must hide her disfigured form while surrounded by all of these beautiful bodies, and she just couldn't take it anymore. She holds firm that she's innocent as he arrests her, and that's when he receives word that Jimmy murdered Charlie. Jump to Morgan immediately finding Jimmy and starting a chase on foot into some big industrial park, I guess. Turns out Jimmy's got a gun as well, and the chase adds some occasional firefights, but it ends with Morgan getting the drop on him. He asks him why he's taking the fall for Rhonda, but this only angers Jimmy and he knocks the detective out. Not sure why he doesn't kill him though. Rhonda sadly and angrily looks at herself in the mirror, and as Jimmy arrives, she hops in the shower. He watches as she exits, but seems shocked when he turns on the lights, and Rhonda whips out a gun and loads a bunch of shots into him. He tells her he killed Chuck to protect her from being caught, and that he loves her. But that just gets him a bullet to the dome. Now we jump to Morgan driving Rhonda out into the middle of nowhere with a shovel. Morgan goes on a rant about his father being killed on the force, how he taught him the difference between right and wrong, and how he became obsessed with a murderer who got away with it due to a technicality in court. It's very incoherent, but the point is that he will not let a killer go free, despite Rhonda's argument that the only person she killed was Jimmy in self-defense. Morgan knows he is right, but he gets a bit distracted thinking about his father, giving Rhonda an opportunity to whack him with a shovel. She kills Detective Dumbass off screen, and we see that things have returned to normal at Rhonda's workout. She's now seen as a hero who took down a serial killer, and she loves the attention. The movie ends with Rhonda breaking the fourth wall as she shows off the deadly safety pin with an evil grin. And that's Killer Workout. Well, it's something. From a technical standpoint, it is not a well-made film. The acting is okay at best, some of the lighting is just terrible, and there are a lot of scenes that could have had a lot trimmed out. I'm not familiar with Pryor's other films, but from my understanding they usually have hammy dialogue, ridiculous action sequences, and his brother Ted. All of that applies to this movie as well, but despite it all, it has a lot of charm to it. We've entered a range of horror movies that only the most devout, seasoned fans can really appreciate. It's clearly working on a minuscule budget, and it's clearly not being made with the intent to make a bunch of money. This is a passion project by someone who loves horror movies, so despite its inherent flaws, I can't help but appreciate films like this. It's clear that everyone involved was having a great time, and it's also just such a stupid premise that you can't help but have fun with it. It actually takes itself very seriously though, which accidentally leads to so many moments of pure comedy gold. If you like So Bad They're Good type films, I think you'll probably have fun with Killer Workout. Despite a few clever moments and homages, I will say the script is definitely the movie's weakest link. The characters are pretty much unlikable or unmemorable, and we don't meet most of the victims until moments before they are killed. It's also really funny that Rhonda is obviously the killer from the start, and they spend the entire film trying to convince us that she isn't. Rhonda's safety pin is also a very random weapon. Is there some kind of logical reason for it being there that I'm missing? I know she uses it as a keychain, but do big safety pins have a function in gyms that I'm not thinking of? The jazzercise scenes are absolutely gratuitous and over the top, but they help to add that fun vibe to the movie. The soundtrack is also really fun, and songs actually got stuck in my head for days after watching this. That being said, there are a lot of times where the music or other sound effects are completely drowning out the dialogue. I actually had to watch several scenes 5 or 6 times just to figure out what was being said. And while those technical inconsistencies sometimes add to the charm, they also prevent you from really engrossing yourself in the film. All in all, Killer Workout isn't scary, it isn't unique, but it is a fun romp of a horror movie that is a great time capsule for the late 80s. You probably already know if this is up your alley or not, but if you like low-budget slashers, you should give Killer Workout a try. It has lots of fight scenes, lots of kills, and lots of fun along the way. Thank you again to my patron Uncle Pete for requesting Killer Workout for me to review. This was a lot of fun, and it's not the usual kind of movie I get to review from the patron requests. Well, that's about it. Join me in 2 weeks as we enter spooky season with a proper review of Halloween Kills. Thank you all for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks for watching Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of Killer Workout. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all my horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks y'all.